Hello and welcome to this webinar titled Key Components of a Comprehensive Program for the Management of Single-Use Technologies in Biologics Manufacturing, hosted by Biopharma Asia magazine and presented by John Maguire, Associate Director at Shire, along with Jeremiah Leclaita, Senior Process Engineering, and Donald Young, Senior Global Product Manager at ThermoFisher Scientific. My name is Orsaya Balog and I will be the moderator. Now, please allow me to introduce our first presenters, John Maguire and Jeremiah Leclaita from Shire. John Maguire is the Associate Director of Manufacturing Systems at Shire's Lexington site. His main area of expertise is the application of process engineering and operational technology for life sciences. He has over 15 years of process engineering experience, including functional specification development and startup of several drug substance manufacturing facilities in Ireland and the United States. John led the design and onboarding of single-use systems for Shire's Lexington manufacturing facility, which won an honorable mention for Facility of the Year in 2011. As a subject matter expert, John provides operations technology perspective for ERP and more recently to finite scheduling systems at Shire. John holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Natural Science. Jeremiah Leclaita is a senior process engineer who has been working at Shire for 6 years. His main area of expertise is the selection, evaluation, and implementation of single-use systems within the manufacturing space. He has worked to help develop and implement business process improvements to streamline single-use systems lifecycle. This work includes liaising with engineering and validation to develop single-use component user requirements, working within the ERP system to better understand the requirements and constraints around creating new materials and batch information. He has also helped develop business processes for qualifying materials for use and material specification generation used for releasing batches within the GMP space. Jeremiah holds a Bachelor of Science from Tufts University in Chemical and Biological Engineering. Welcome, John and Jeremiah.
Hello. Thank you, Ursula. Here's a brief outline of today's presentation, and I'm excited to be here to tell you about all of this. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Shire and what Shire is all about, both globally and at the Massachusetts Biologics site, where Jeremiah and I are both located in support. I'm going to turn it over to Jeremiah, and he's going to discuss some of the benefits and challenges of having a single-use facility, and he's going to discuss some of the single-use system lifecycle, and with a specific focus on the design and verify part of the single-use system lifecycle. And then we'll turn it over to Don Young, who will tell you about the ThermoFisher perspective. So Shire is a global biotech company who has specific focus on serving patients who have rare diseases. A little bit about rare diseases. There are about 350 million people worldwide who are afflicted by rare diseases. And something I didn't know about before I started Shire was that that's about 1 in 20 people globally, worldwide, who have rare diseases. And if you think about that in perspective of your LinkedIn community, if you have 500 people on LinkedIn that you're connected to, that's at least 20 people who could potentially have a rare disease. The people who have rare diseases are terribly afflicted by these treatments, and the need is out there. Excuse me. The need is great in the world to provide these treatments for the patients. There's about 7,000 rare diseases that are known, and only about 5% of these rare diseases have treatments available. One of the reasons I'm proud to work at Shire is that most of these patients are children. And these children have debilitating diseases that prevent them from reaching young adult ages. And to have these treatments available to these people to improve their quality of life is something that I'm very proud to do at Shire. So with that being said, there is definitely an urgency to provide these treatments for these patients. At Shire, we have small patient populations for these treatments, so we have short campaigns that require many different changeovers of products as we provide these therapies for these patients. So it's important for us to be nimble and efficient with what we do at Shire, Massachusetts Biologics site. Shire is a global company. We have about 17 manufacturing sites worldwide, about 40 marketed products. Approximately 20 of those are for the Biologics site. We've got a very strong pipeline with about 40 clinical programs in the pipeline. At the Massachusetts Biologics site, we were recently named the Launch Center of Excellence, which means that we'll be seeing a lot of these pipeline products go through our facility, which increases the need for efficiency and nimbleness to be able to get these products through very quickly. And here's a brief look at what our pipeline products are in different various stages of the pipeline. This is a little timeline of Shire's history. Shire was founded in the 80s, a little over 30 years ago. And some of the points I'd like to really point out, some significant times, is in 2005, Shire acquired a small biotech company in Cambridge, Massachusetts called Transkaryotic Therapies, TKT. And this was really where Shire entered the rare disease field. Transkaryotic Therapies had a treatment for Hunter syndrome called Elaprase, and from there it grew on. And another key date here is in 2008. In 2008 is when Shire broke ground for a manufacturing facility in Lexington, Massachusetts, where most of the technology used for this manufacturing facility was going to be single-use systems. Another key date is in 2016 when Shire purchased a company called Baxalta, and it became this global manufacturing, this global company that we are today. Shire has a multitude of treatments, and this is a chart that shows kind of the different areas that Shire is providing treatments for. What I'd like to point out here is this wedge at the lower left-hand corner for genetic diseases, and this is where we are focused on providing treatments for at the Massachusetts Biologics site. We have treatments for Gaucher disease, Hunter syndrome, Fabry disease, and hereditary angioedema. So a little bit about Lexington Plant. This is primarily a single-use technology facility, and there was a need back in 2008 to expedite a single-use facility to provide a commitment to patients who needed this treatment very quickly. Some of the benefits of going to a facility with single-use systems is that we'll be able to have a very flexible facility, bring in multiple technologies. We knew that our patient populations were very limited, and we would be doing short campaigns and multiple changeovers per year. And another benefit is that there's a lower capital cost because it's a single-use facility. We didn't have a need to invest in clean utilities. We have lower waste because there's less cleaning. And interestingly enough, this facility is LEED certified because of the reduced amount of water and waste that's produced because of the single-use facility. And just a quick look across our unit operations where single-use systems are used. Our cell culture from biothaw all the way to our harvest hold is 100% single-use. Our recovery, purification, and buffer media prep is sort of a hybrid between traditional single-use systems and also single-use systems. All our drug substance storage is of completely single-use systems as well. And at the Massachusetts Biologics site, here's a look at our product portfolio. So like I said, we have a multi-product facility. We're doing multiple changeovers per year, and we have different bioreactor and cell culture technology where one of our Cambridge plants uses roller bottle and stainless steel bioreactors for their cell culture. Our Lexington plant also has one plant for roller bottle, but we also have bioreactor perfusion as well as bioreactor terminal batch. And there's a mixture of clinical manufacturing processes and also commercial manufacturing processes as well. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremiah, and he's going to tell you all about some of the benefits and challenges of our single-use system.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Lecklad, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the single-use and especially the implementation at Shire. So one of the first questions that we would like to ask, and I think John kind of touched on this, is why would you ever use single-use? Why would you ever choose single-use? And there are a lot of benefits, and obviously a lot of companies are going towards single-use. Some of the benefits are the scalability and flexibility that it lends to your facility. It decreases the amount of clean utilities you need. It also allows you to change products quickly. We are able to go from benchtop to 2,000 liter scale relatively quickly. And we also reduce the time and the cost associated with equipment turnover. So we're able to, once something's used, to be able to throw it away and have basically a clean slate to start with. The lower cost, we don't have to hot plumb our equipment in. We don't have to install stainless steel systems, qualify the cleaning and the sterilization of those. We use less water, less energy, and also speed to market. And this one is big, so you're able to qualify equipment as you're constructing, right? So as you're constructing a manufacturing space, you're able to qualify that equipment out of that space sometimes, depending, which allows you to really speed up your time to market. Also for tech transfers, which, as John said, this site is becoming the center of excellence for Shire. During tech transfers, it's a lot easier to be able to bring these tech transfers to fruition. But this is a cautionary tale as well, because there are challenges that come along with single use, and if those challenges aren't appropriately handled, single use can be just as large and unwieldy as any other system. And in fact, I mean, the poor systems can make even the most efficient technology render it basically useless. So one of the big things here, and if you're looking to implement a lot of single use, is there's a paradigm shift in your relationship with your vendors. We're really transferring a lot of the onus from traditional process engineers to a materials management role and a materials science role. One of the big things is that it's not just a purchase. This is becoming a partnership. When you're bringing in single-use equipment, when you're bringing in stainless steel equipment, or you're bringing in these long life skids, you purchase it from a vendor, and then you own that equipment, you own the upkeep of it. Yeah, you might speak with the vendor to get replacement parts, but for the most part, you own it. In this case, that's no longer the case when you're using single use. This is very much a partnership where you're purchasing basically raw materials. Your single use equipment are basically raw materials on a regular frequency. So you have this partnership that includes day-to-day purchases. It includes conversations and relationships between non-conforming materials and investigations. There are yearly pricing negotiations, audits and how audits are handled, vendor change notifications. There are all of these agreements. So there are technical quality agreements. There are master service agreements. There are all these different touch points between who's now the end user and the supplier. And to keep a robust and working relationship is really something that has to be understood for both companies, both the end user, which is the pharmaceutical company, and the supplier, which is the single-use companies, to flourish. Another big hidden cost is that we're holding a lot more inventory, right? So all of a sudden, all our equipment is our totes. They're just empty totes. And all the things that actually touch our process are raw materials. They're single-use. So we have to know where this goes, where it sits in the warehouse, how we transfer it to the manufacturing facility, how we install it, use it, and then remove it at the end. We also have new requirements and programs for single-use. So yeah, we still need to do the initial design, the initial user requirements, and the initial qualification as with any system, but now we also need to know how we're going to inspect and release equipment on a per lot basis, very much like chemicals or resins. We also have to worry about the logistics, like I said before, about how we're going to move this to other places. We need new groups. We need vendor quality management. It takes a much bigger role. Materials management takes a much bigger role. Audit group takes a much bigger role because we have a lot more suppliers that we're dealing with. So really just the hidden costs involved with the logistics of forecasting, planning, purchasing, inspecting, holding, moving, using, and disposing of these single-use items really is something that if you don't forecast for up front and you don't appreciate that that's something that you have to deal with, it can really come back and be problematic in the future. What does all this mean? It means that single use is not a side job. It's not something that you can have a traditional process engineer do for a couple hours a week. You really need to embrace single use, and you need it to permeate throughout your entire company if you want it to be successful. So how was that done at Shire? That was done at Shire using this life cycle program, and what we were hoping to do here, right, is that for every node in our life cycle, we hope that the previous node fed it and that it would feed the next. So we broke it down into these 5 different nodes. Our first step is our planning step, and this is where projects are born, right? This includes our initiating events for all these single-use projects and developing these programs to bring the plans to fruition. This is tech transfers, CAPAs, or change controls for process improvements or root cause improvements from deviations. This is where all our projects are kind of developed. From there, we move to our specification section. This is where we really build the plan and build the beef around what our project is, right? So this is if you're implementing new single-use technology, we have to define what are the requirements for that what are the requirements around that unit operation? What do we need our single-use component to actually do? This is a huge thing that we want to understand. We want to understand what does something need to do, because we don't want to under-engineer and we don't want to over-engineer our single-use. Single-use shouldn't be you go to a catalog and you grab something without assessing it. You still need to assess these as if they were pieces of equipment. This also includes vendor review and quoting, right? So just like any other equipment, we want to bid out these single-use solutions to understand what are the possible solutions that are available to meet our design, right? We follow that into our design and verification, where we do our prototyping. We actually select what solution we want to use, and then we qualify that. And this includes understanding that, doing our design review, ensuring that our components capability meets our process requirements, and verifying that that is all set. Our installation and acceptance, even after we've qualified a part, we're not really done, right? We have to understand how are we going to bring new lots in? What is the logistics of bringing those lots in? How do we set up components? So we need operating procedures for inspecting single-use components, for installing them, for using them, for disposing of them. All of that needs infrastructure around it to ensure that we have seamless use in manufacturing. And then finally, our maintenance. including our continuous process monitoring, all our change management, anything that comes up with deviations or other improvements. This is where we basically we continuously review our single-use program and our single-use applications to see if it's the best, the most compliant, the most up-to-date, streamlined way of doing things. Anything that comes out of that maintenance as a nice-to-have or compliance or anything else, it moves right back into our planning phase, and our cycle begins again. So that's basically our overview of how our single-use life cycle works. And what we really want to do today is we want to focus, and what I'm going to do is focus on the design and verification section of this. And mainly, I'm going to take a deeper look into qualifying components and understanding the leachable contribution. So, for most requirements for single use, they can be performed on a single part, right? So they can be performed on a single, single use component. And this is, does our component withstand the temperature requirements of that process? Do we need to be able to sterilely or aseptically connect our component downstream of the filter? Is it chemically resistant? Is it going to be interacting with any of the chemicals we're dealing with, right? So these are all requirements that we can perform on an individual part. But some requirements, and especially leachables, have a cumulative effect, right? And the analogy is one bee sting is survivable, but 10,000 is deadly. So I want to just take a second here to stop to just give a brief update on what is a leachable, what is an extractable. So a leachable is a chemical constituent that can migrate from a polymer or material under normal processing conditions. So this is how we manufacture on site. An extractable is a chemical constituent that migrates from the material under exaggerated conditions. So this is that same polymer material that we then extract under elevated temperature with more aggressive solvents to see what are all the possible chemical constituents that come out. And then our conservative method of determining if our leachable, so if our process chemicals coming out are dangerous, we assume that all extractables are leachables, and that's how we do our risk-based approach. So we use extractables to determine what our potential leachable risk is. So what we'd like to do is look at a case study. So what do I mean by a cumulative assessment? So if we wanted to assess a sterilizing grade filter, so let's just say any 0.2 micron filter, and we wanted to assess it within this process. So this is just a process. We have a chrome skid, we have a UF, we have buffers coming in. Whatever the process is, we want to assess this filter. So one method would be to look at the furthest downstream filter that we use this to say, what is the most risky use of this filter? And in this case, it would be the terminal filter right before our bottling. So if we're looking at this as from the potential leachables or the extractables risk, and we say that this filter contributes a 0.5 micron per dose of some extractable. And our limit is 1.5. So our threshold of toxicological concern for that extractable is 1.5. We would say that this filter is okay. We could qualify this in terms of its additive properties, right? But the question then comes up, well, we also have two other of these 0.2 filters. We have a charge filter and we have an eluate filter. We also have 3 more of these filters in our buffer prep. So when it comes down to it, we really have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5, 6 filters that all contribute the same leachables to the process. So when we look at the cumulative contribution of this filter, we see that it's no longer under our threshold of toxicological concern, and we need to look more specifically into this compound to see what the ill effects are and what the adverse effects are at this concentration. So this is that cumulative versus this individual assessment, where an individual assessment or a single beast thing might come back as copacetic, but a cumulative effect could come back as having adverse effects. So how do we do that? The first way we do that is for every single-use component that we utilize on the manufacturing site, we have broken down into its individual subcomponents. So every subcomponent has a unique internal tag number, and we call them SU numbers. And each SU number basically refers to a brand of that material. So to go completely outside of our industry, you could say that Kleenex versus tissues, right? So SU 1002 is the Kleenex brand of all the tissues out there. I thought that's a good outset, right? So basically, it could be different lengths, it could be different diameters, but all of a single brand of tubing is this SU 1002. What does that do for us? It does a few things for us. That helps us understand, it helps us understand what materials are actually touching our product, right? We want to know what is touching our product. We're putting this product into patients. We want to understand all the materials that have a potential to impact the safety, the efficacy, and the quality of that product. So what we do is we end up tagging everything. We can see what our uses of each of these materials now. We can see how we utilize them across products. And overall, if there are any issues or if there are any deviations or investigations, we can track what kind of products and what do we know about them throughout our process. Once we have that, we can then go to each individual process. So this is just a breakdown of a 5-liter pillow bag followed by a transfer tubing and a 2-liter bottle. So if we look at this cumulatively, the pillow bag has a bag film, ports, platinum cured silicone tubing, and polypropylene fittings. If we look at our transfer tubing, it uses the same polypropylene. So this is huge. This is that cumulative effect that we were talking about before, where now that we've tagged these and we've identified what each material is, we can see how different companies, different vendors, different components share the same subcomponents. We then use a different silicone tubing. There's a PES filter, followed by bottles. So by using this, we're able to understand what is the total surface area contribution of each different material that we utilize. Not only that, but now we can assess that against, do we have extractables data on each of these materials? And by doing it per component, we're able to scale up and down depending on how big or how small the contribution is. So if you look at this, right, this is only 3 components, right, with, half a dozen subcomponents in it. You can assume, you can kind of imagine that on a larger scale, let's say a full upstream and downstream manufacturing suite, you would have, dozens of parts, maybe 100 parts with hundreds of subcomponents, where they're all used intertwined. So this becomes much more of an analytical issue the more components and the more subcomponents that we actually end up using. So the way that we overcome that is we actually use the statistical software that by breaking everything down and using the relational database within the software, we're able to actually fully characterize our manufacturing process from thaw to bottling. We can tell every square centimeter of product or process contact material what it is and where it is contributing from throughout the entire process. So in this example, we can see that material 1 doesn't make up a large portion of our process, but material 2 and material 3 are the lion's share. So we want to maybe better characterize those materials because that contributes more risk to our process. And obviously behind percentages, we have the raw data. And from the surface areas and from our extraction data, we can take that same statistical software and we can then understand what are the extractables. So what are the potential leachables that are being introduced to our process. So from all of this, we're able to say at a cumulative level that the manufacturing process in question has this potential leachables profile, and from that, using the materials we're using, we're safe and we're compliant. So that's really kind of how we're doing part of the verification, right? So that's one part of one node of our life cycle. So where we're moving from here is to try and is identifying all the interrelationships between all those nodes and all the different information in each of those. So in conclusion, really, like we said, this is really a cautionary tale. Single-use technology provides great benefit to the life science manufacturing, but it's only as good as the business systems that define it. No matter how efficient technology is, we can make it useless, right? We all can make it useless by building overcomplicated or poorly defined business processes. We need to understand from upfront, we can't buy single-use, we can't implement single-use without understanding what that does to the business. So really, in conclusion, our key point here is that when single-use is implemented with the correct processes and infrastructure, it is an agile and robust system that allows for quick and compliant manufacturing of multiple products within the same space for a fraction of the time of qualification and implementation. That's really our key takeaway, that when it's done right, it is a very powerful tool, powerful system, but we have to make sure that we think about it up front. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today, and I'm going to turn this back over to Ursula. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John and Jeremiah. Once again, I would like to remind our viewers that there will be a live question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Please feel free to send in your questions at any time during the presentation via the Questions tab located at the right-hand side of your screen, and we will go through these at the end of the webinar. Now, please allow me to introduce our second presenter, Donald Young, Senior Global Product Manager at ThermoFisher Scientific. Donald Young is a Senior Global Product Manager at ThermoFisher's Bioproduction Division facility in Logan, Utah. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Biology and a Master of Science degree in Public Health. Don has 10 years' experience as a product manager. Don started his career as a laboratory technician specializing in cell culture and joined ThermoFisher after working as a medical science liaison at Abbott Laboratories and Merck, Sharp, and Dome for 12 years. Don's management of bioprocess containers entails participation of cross-functional teams that manage change control, pricing, supply chain, film portfolio, training, product customization, and component library maintenance. Welcome, Donald.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I think that covers it. And thank you for the invitation to speak here from BioPharm Asia, and I will be speaking to you for about the next 30 minutes on the supplier's perspective. I really enjoyed John and Jeremiah's presentation. Thanks, guys. And although I had not seen their presentation before, I find some commonalities between your comments and what I'm about to say. So the key components are really the products, the quality, the product quality, and then as Jeremiah mentioned, the business processes and supply assurance. And I'm going to Jeremiah, I'm going to repeat some of your words, but so this is really key. From our viewpoint as a supplier, managing the supply of these single-use technology products to our customers it really centers around establishing and maintaining a really good working partnership with them. That's really important because, as Jeremiah mentioned, this isn't a one-time buy. This is a repeat buy. And, if we have our way as a supplier, it will be a repeat buy for many, many years. So it's kind of a fluid relationship, and we need to be able to kind of ride through that and work with our customers on their journey to get their products commercialized so they can save lives. And that's a really heady proposition from a supplier's point of view. But really the key components, and they're going to center around products, is the product design, the product quality, and the product supply requirements. We also, as suppliers, need to leverage and shape our operational capabilities to respond to customers pre-sale and post-sale. And needs can be diverse. They can be changing, and as well as they can be immediate and urgent. I have one customer who called me yesterday and decided that for their bulk drug substance, they were looking into a second freezing system. So kind of a last-minute change. Very interesting, but another one example of urgency from our customers. So I'm breaking this down into kind of four buckets. The first I'll talk about is product design. A supplier should have a full range of products for all separate and discrete upstream and downstream processes, including sizes. As Jeremiah mentioned, going from benchtop to scale up to GMP production requires consistency of products and scalability of those products throughout the development and then the product life cycle. This simplifies qualification. If a customer like Shire can use the same contact materials from bench all the way to scale up, that certainly will relieve some validation burden from them and make their lives a little easier and get them to market faster. And then those optional services, and I'll talk about those in a moment, but those are either they can be pre and post sale. Let's go right to that. So the simple view of upstream processes for biologics include mixing for media and feed supplements. So the supplier should have the ability to provide single-use mixing products, whole tank storage bags, or tank liners after the media and feed supplements are mixed, filtered, and, for storage and then transport or feeding into the bioreactors. That cell proliferation product production expression stage includes the need for single-use bioreactors from mammalian cells and also fermenters of the single-use variety for microbial expression systems. And then small volume bags for sampling and for those analytics. So that's just a view of some of the basic upstream processes and the product spread and portfolio needs for those processes. Downstream, it's a similar story. There's more mixers involved, there's more harvest bags involved, a lot more harvest and purification bags because you're now purifying and using lots of buffers. So the volumes can go up as far as size of bags for buffer storage and prep and feeding, and then for kind of end terminal processes like storage of bulk liquids, either final product or precursors, and then that filling, that final fill process step. Single use is employed across all of these process steps, and it's important for suppliers to be able to provide a full range of products for all these steps. Services. These can be for development of processes or process optimization, from characterization, and Jeremiah mentioned one kind of area of concern. It's leachables and extractables. The supplier should have their materials of construction and their products fully characterized and fit for use. The process should be optimized, so suppliers should have process optimization services as well as scale up, conversion to SUT, and then design. Suppliers should know their products better than anyone else, certainly better than any customer, and they should be able to provide that expertise, that design and operational expertise to their customers. Analytical services, whether that's contracted or in-house, for temperature excursion testing, leachables, extractables testing, stability testing, and then certain, bioburden and endotoxin are just some examples of analytical services that good suppliers provide. Field service and operational support. Yes, install or acceptance testing, install, repairs, modifications, preventative maintenance, training, and then technical support, service plans, as well as, again, more training and collaborative planning, supply optimization. I'll talk about that in a few more minutes, even down to the point of seminar and on-site training programs. The second kind of quadrant we'll talk about is product quality. Now, this really involves manufacturing processes, quality processes, and working back upstream to supplier qualification, component qualification, and then the all-important change control. So product processes and equipment should have quality by design built in. So we're not trying to test in quality, we're trying to design processes that will yield the highest quality products. So we do these failure mode analyses, whether they're for the design or for the process. We then use that data to inform our design of experiments, which ultimately, again, frames our facility design choices. In process on the shop floor, we're sealing film together, and so we need to control the time, pressure, and temperature of those film welds, and all of those welds should be statistically process controlled along the entire production chain to be able to do traceability and root cause analysis should there be a failure. Those processes, those shop floor processes, should be routinely qualified and revalidated to make sure there's no drift in the process. There should always be at least one eye, probably more than one eye, on practical and continuous improvement of the process. This should be a daily activity. This should be a minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour, day-to-day activity that happens and becomes the mindset of the shop floor operators and then everyone around them as well. And then issue management. Things happen. For sure they happen. No one is perfect. No process is absolutely perfect. So there needs to be a clear and robust issue management process. And then if there's recurrent issues, then that would feed into a product quality roadmap for attention and resolution if there's kind of patterns of failure or issues. Compliance to good manufacturing practices and ISO guidelines are important for every supplier to make sure, again, that they're doing what they say they're doing it and they're controlling those processes. Down to the in-process and finished inspections, there should be inspections, goods in inspections on the component level. For us, it's film, ports, fittings, tubing, and then process intermediates, whether it's our bag chambers, or the final product inspection. There should be visual inspections as well as statistically validated failure testing, like leak testing using for us, it's a hydro burst testing. Routine process validation and stability testing is important. Again, we want to make sure that we've established a robust process and that those process parameters don't drift over time. So we do quarterly validation of our endotoxin, bioburden reduction, and our assurance of stability assurance level. So gamma radiation stability assurance level, SAL, according to those established guidelines, as well as endotoxin reduction, particulate control, and then mechanical properties such as film to film or film to port, seal strength. Ongoing stability testing programs at time 0, half-life, life and a half, across a battery of established USP, ISO, and EP test criteria. I won't go into all of these, but certainly I can if needed. again, those mechanical film characteristics, and then additional testing. Now, this may not be performed every year or every quarter, but there should be adherence or characterization of the film or materials using extractables technology or techniques, and that is, for a supplier, it can be viewed as a moving target. There are several organizations now looking at providing guidelines. There's supplier organization, there's end user organization, there's third-party organizations, kind of a hybrid of both end users and suppliers. But the latest guideline that that ThermoFisher is adhering to is the Bioform Operations Group guideline, which is a consortium of end users. I believe Shire is a member. This is a testing guideline that's been adopted by more than 30 members of the BPOG consortium. So that's the latest test guideline, and that's how we've characterized our film. We've done several different film characterizations. This is the most recent one. And then growth promotion. You want to make sure that you're using reference mammalian and or bacterial microbial cell lines to again measure and control or assess the control of the process using growth promotion test methods. Suppliers. There should be an approved supplier list. We call it our ASL. There needs to be justification. This is a collaboration between our commercial team, our quality team, and then obviously our purchasing team to internally justify that. We have quality criteria that we have to adhere to, and the quality and purchasing departments jointly hold the approval for designating new suppliers and getting onto the ASL list. Components should be tested and validated for performance characteristics. They should be gamma irradiation compatible. They should have established biocompatibility passes, so pass the USP, ISO, and EP testing. There should be a characterization of their chemical compatibility against typical process liquids, and then those physical mechanical tests, which include leak, burst, pressure, tensile, pump life, bend strength, seal strength, particulate counts, and extractables. They should all be characterized when and as appropriate. Change control. Here's a big topic. There needs to be a robust process to manage this. Suppliers need to have an advanced notification process when there is a change in the raw materials, especially if it's a fluid contact or product contact material, changes to the production or testing processes for those products, and then manufacturing or storage facility changes. We look to anticipate these discontinuations. We have special quality contracts with many of our customers, our largest customers, who then ask for and by contract get advanced notification. We look at evaluating existing supply, existing demand, comparing that to existing demand, and looking to buy bridging inventories or buying up supply prior to discontinuation in order to ease that transition period and lengthen it as long as possible. As Jeremiah said, a lot of times there needs to be qualification work to be done. That qualification work needs people and time, and as he said, it's not a part-time job. So this is really important for a transition planning. And then strategic planning. We don't want to be the only customer buying a specific component because the risk is much higher of discontinuation or change for that component. So we are looking to proactively, we're taking a proactive approach, I should say, to reducing that risk of these last-minute changes, whether it's at the component level or the supplier level. And we also look to strengthen our supply chain for key components by adding alternate sources or dual component supply. There's a lot to be said about supply assurance. We need to make sure our supply chain with our customers is robust and transparent. There's more emphasis on this now than ever. Our manufacturing needs to be much more sophisticated, including the inclusion of and the propagation of automation on our shop floor. The good suppliers need to look at a multi-site manufacturing strategy to avoid supply interruptions. It should have a global presence to hit to be able to serve those manufacturing hotspots. We, as ThermoFisher in the bioproduction division, we stratify our suppliers into critical, key, standard, and restricted. I'll start at the bottom first. Restricted means just that. There are restrictions on what component we would use or source from this supplier and how it's used. They're very limited. They may be done at the customer's request, but certainly there's some issues and an improvement plan implemented with these restricted suppliers. For standard suppliers, okay, they're not in the restricted category, but they're still at higher risk, so more routine evaluations are required. For key suppliers, they do supply or give us support and key resources to help us along with our goods in testing. They're selected based on the quality consensus, and they're at less risk and on a more relaxed risk assessment and evaluation schedule. And then our critical suppliers. These are our primary sterilizing suppliers, our film suppliers, our contract labs, and we do more on-site audits at a set frequency with these critical suppliers because they're just that. They're critical to us. Raising the standards of manufacturing is really important. Multiple manufacturing sites for risk mitigation to avoid supply interruptions. Increased capacity. We've undergone tremendous growth year over year in our production, so we need to keep building along with our customers because, as Jeremiah said, there's always new projects coming along, and because there is the requirement to continue to supply and to reduce lead times, investing in new facilities and new equipment will help us achieve that. And then again, I mentioned it earlier, that one or two eyes or more on all eyes really on continuous improvement. Steps we've taken recently and over the past is improving our gowning and our inspections and process monitoring, enhancing our training. Our new operators get over 400 hours of training during their probationary period, and we constantly emphasize with them that these products that they're making are being used by our customers to make life-saving drugs. And many of my colleagues are customers for our customers, if that makes sense. So their family members are buying these life-saving medications. So it's really important for a supplier to understand that it is truly a partnership, and we're in this together because, yes, we want customers like Shire to buy more of our ThermoFisher products, but Shire also wants us to buy their products as consumers. So it is truly a joint relationship. We have 4 manufacturing sites. We've positioned these to allow us to respond to demand in these production hotspots. Our manufacturing headquarters is in our Logan, Utah headquarters, or in our Logan, Utah site, where we can serve global North America, all the Americas, as well as Asia Pacific and even Europe. From this site, we have our East Coast manufacturing site for our East Coast hub customers, a manufacturing site in Great Britain to serve our European customers, and also a manufacturing site in Matamoros, which is a backup for global demand. Suppliers should have a good business continuity strategy. I was called by a customer not so long ago. He said, "Don, what happens if there is a fire or an earthquake at your facility?" And it was important for him to understand that we have continuity plans. We have a top-level plan on processes, policies, and structure to respond to emergencies, a variety of emergencies. We have business practice activities, essential activities documentation that identifies these key activities or operations and sets minimum staffing levels and recovery time objectives. Every employee has a desktop emergency guide, and there's ongoing workplace safety training on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So I think I'm about at the end. I'm close to the end, so bear with me for a few more moments. Finally, it's the business processes. Again, as Jeremiah mentioned, this is a repeat buy situation. There's a requirement for warehousing, and sometimes warehouses in some areas of the country can be very expensive or tough to find space in, and they get filled up very quickly. So as a good supplier, we want to help our customers manage those lead time requirements or manage lead times to try to reduce those with the goal of just-in-time deliveries. Our processes should, a good supplier's process should also anticipate design optimizations from the product point of view, which would include a large library of qualified components for those customers to choose from. And again, as I mentioned earlier, pre- and post-sale support is also important from a business process point of view. So demand planning, good suppliers will have mechanisms to reduce or eliminate lead times. This is done, one way to do this is to look at historic demand, assess those raw materials and their need buy times, the lead times of those essential raw materials. We partner with customers, or a supplier can partner with customers to issue forward POs that are binding with negotiated delivery dates and prices. When the customer isn't billed until the call off, which is usually 30 days before need. The product ships 2 days before to arrive just in time. And again, no billing until receipt at the shop or at the customer's shipping dock. Having a good, robust, highly qualified component library is important. At Thermo, we have a standard component library, which is a subset of our total library, but it comes from, it's populated with components that we use most commonly. They're qualified they're tested 4 times a year to requalify our sterility assurance, bioburden reduction, endotoxin levels, as well as to confirm our process controls from mechanical peel strength for film to film, film to port seals, as well as the dimensional parameters for those components. Maintaining a safety stock, there should be a stocked component library, which again which totally removes now a second lead time, the supply time from the raw material to the end or to the supplier. So cutting that time can cut at least half the time off, and sometimes more than that. 2/3 of the time can be saved by using stocked components in the design. So we have an active standardization program that we work side by side with our customers, again, to manage cost and manage lead times. This is also the library where we have the greatest buying power, so we're able to do some cost control as well as lead time control. Access to the components qualified by our customers. We get asked this a lot, and we are agnostic, and a good supplier should be agnostic and should source from all major component suppliers, as long as, again, those components are qualified as fit for purpose. And this allows good suppliers to optimize product configurations, single-use design configurations for best performance. Now it's the last slide. You made it. We all made it. So at ThermoFisher, and this is really true, it should be true for any SUT supplier, their goal is to become that partner. That suppliers should have facilities that meet industry and even exceed industry and end user expectations and industry standards. There should be continuous investment on the manufacturing network. It should be audit ready and should be able to host audit sites daily, weekly, monthly. It should have a robust supplier qualification and risk mitigation program, an inventory strategy that will look to reduce cost and lead time, harmonizing those strategies between sites, so global harmonization between manufacturing and quality systems, and then that ongoing improvement mentality. Thank you very much. Ursula, I'm going to hand it back over to you now.
Thank you so much, Donald. Now we will begin the question and answer segment of the webinar. Once again, I would like to remind the audience that they can still send in their questions via the questions tab on the right-hand side of the screen. The first question is, how do you assess extractables across all unit operations? Is there any sort of risk assessment of pre-work performed to limit the total number of unit operations to be included, or do you include everything from cell through DS bottling? This is for Jeremiah.
Hi. So, yeah, so when we first began doing this cumulative assessment, we did try to assess everything throughout the process, and it turned out to be just a really ungodly large number of components and subcomponents and extractables. We realized that this was so what we've done is we've started to use these mitigation techniques. So one of the ones that we rely heavily on is the idea of spike clearance. So identifying what unit operation, what is the furthest downstream unit operation that we can say empirically clears small molecules, or i.e. leachables, and then using that as our basis, we'll then go from that point through to the end. So saying at that point, so at that unit operation that we know empirically through studies clears small molecule, we can say that most all whatever small molecules upstream of that unit operation would be cleared from the process, and really we only have to worry about the downstream operations. We can also tear it down, right, as a second order approximation or a third order approximation by removing solvents. So we said that extractables are done through aggressive solvents and aggressive, long durations and hot solvents. We can say that, maybe we don't need hexane at reflux as one of our extraction solvents if we're running this with ambient aqueous solutions. So there are some techniques that we do use because it does become way too big of an assessment, and it really loses a lot of value. It's so big and so overly conservative that it loses value and it loses touch with how we actually manufacture.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Now that you've had a single-use facility in use for several years, can you talk a little about the benefits you've seen from having single-use technologies in manufacturing, as well as some of the hidden impacts to other systems? John?
Sure, that's a really good question. As I attempted to convey earlier on in the presentation, Shire Lexington manufacturing facility, single-use facility, we're seeing a lot of clinical programs come through the facility, as well as a mixture of commercial products. Some of the benefits of having a single-use systems that allows us a lot of flexibility, where we can very easily change processes, very quickly do product changeovers to go from one product to the next. So some of the challenges that we see to other systems is that the Shire Lexington facility is still on paper batch records. Eventually, we're going to implement a manufacturing execution system with electronic batch records. Some of the additional challenges that when you implement an MES system you need to allow, MES systems have different modules, and traditional stainless steel facilities have a large focus on equipment management, hygienic status, whether something is clean, dirty, steamed, clean hold times and dirty hold times. When you have a single-use facility, a lot of that focus shifts from the equipment management, now it's over to the materials management. Now your single-use system actually becomes your equipment. So the focus goes from your hygienic status now really to your component status, whether this batch of a bioreactor bag is in the stock status has to be released. So in other words, your focus now goes from your equipment management to your materials management. So your MES systems, whatever you select for an MES system, needs to enable that and make sure that your manufacturing can continue and have that status enabled for you. Another thing too, because these are plastic parts and tubing that you're using, sometimes these will fail on the manufacturing floor while they're in use. Filters can clog, tubing can burst, bags can have tears in them. We hope that this doesn't happen, but an MES system needs to be able to allow the technician to be able to remove a bag from the process and be able to scan a new bag and insert that in the process. So whatever system that is used for an MES needs to be able to do that very easily for the operator. And also knowing that because these are all part of the manufacturing process, these have to be included in the genealogy of whatever batch that is being made. So the traceability needs to be there, and the ability needs to be for the operator to very easily change parts on the manufacturing floor as well as in an electronic batch record system. So these are some of the hidden challenges that are there for systems that are not really sort of manufacturing process, but really operational systems. But that's a good question.
Thank you, John. How does a supplier manage extractables testing for their products? Don.
Well, suppliers should be looking to characterize, again, to the most commonly accepted standards or guidelines. I did speak about this a little bit. This has been a moving target, and it's confounded end users. The kind of history of extractables testing consisted of each supplier having their own homegrown, in-house grown protocol. It was an informed decision by each supplier, but inevitably there were differences between test protocols from supplier to supplier, and this made it very difficult to impossible for end users to do side-by-side, like-to-like comparisons. I like to call it apples and fire trucks. They're both red, but after that, that's about as much similarity as there is. With the advent of these guidelines, then it is more likely that suppliers will test to the same protocol now, and again make it easier for end users to do these or side-by-side comparisons. And it is really just characterization. At Thermo, we take the view that it's not our decision. We're going to use the best third-party or best test labs we can find, whether they're inside or internal or third-party, to do the testing. And then it's our customer's decision, because as Jeremiah said, these are risk assessments and adverse or threshold testing that they need to perform, and we need to give them the best possible data in order for them to do those assessments.
Thank you, Don. What can end users do to reduce single-use technologies, product cost, and lead times?
Well, I'm going to take that one. And I did mention that we have an ongoing program at Thermo where we do either process walks or design evaluations, where we will look at the library of designs, of single-use designs, and look to do some simplification or standardization. For instance, We have one customer who has 7 different designs for a 200-liter bag. Well, they don't need 7 separate 200-liter bags. They need one 200-liter bag, but they need that bag to do the function of those other 7. And there's ways to do that. They're really simple. It's component selection, it's design simplification, and it's a process by which you can choose components that are stocked and and therefore, for us, those are the components we have the greatest buying power. So again, it's going to that standard stock component library. We get the best information and the most time and cost advantages.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. So before I finish the webinar, I would like to ask our presenters if they have any closing remarks. John.
First, I want to say thank you for joining the presentation. I want to reiterate, and thank you to Jeremiah and Don for presenting as well. You guys are very good. And I do want to reiterate there are a lot of very good benefits for facilities that use single-use technologies. And just like with any technology and anything, you need a very good business process to match that. You can't really lay the tracks as the train is running down the tracks. It's going to end up derailing. So a well-thought-out business process is really a critical thing in order to make sure that your facility keeps running. Make no mistake, the stakes are high. We're making therapeutics for people who desperately need them to improve their quality of life, and we owe it to them as patients to make sure that we're doing this in a very efficient way for them.
Thank you, John. Jeremiah, do you have any closing remarks?
I would just like to thank everyone for joining and for listening, and John and Don as well. So thank you all for having me.
And thank you to Ursula for allowing us to present this.
Thank you. Don, do you have any closing remarks?
Sure, I'll throw some more flowers on this one. It was really fun. And thanks John and Jeremiah, sorry, and also you, Ursula, and all those 41 views and participants who took the time out of their busy schedules. My parting comment is this: suppliers and end users need to work together, and the best results as an end user is when we have those nice, long-term, durable relationships that can survive some choppy waters and some events that aren't the best, because they do happen and they will happen. But it's that partnership and, again, that shared goal of providing those life-saving medications is really, I think, the key. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the day.
Thank you, John. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our presenters for John Maguire from Shire, Jeremiah Lecleiter from Shire, and Donald Young from ThermoFisher Scientific for sharing their knowledge with us. I would like to remind our audience that they can view this webinar on demand by visiting biopharma-asia.com. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.